if you want to own your own business and I can help you through it, you have to go to business school. Like, no, you'll know more, you'll gain more, go to college, maintain that like determination and follow through with education. Because she's like, you know what? Education is something no one else can take away from you.
Welcome to Functional Conversations, brought to you by The Function. I'm the host, DJ Shaky. Today we are at Artform Studios, Highland Park. I'm here with the hairstylist slash DJ slash business owner of this establishment, Sherry Younge.
Hello.
There we go. 6 episodes in, you'd think I'd remember to push it right away. Anyways, so we were talking off camera before we started, and you're the first guest I've had that I did not know prior to the show. Connected through just some comments and DMs and some previous posts, and here we are. I thought the idea of a hair salon slash record shop was fascinating to me. So I decided to reach out and let's see what everything's about.
Thank you. Well, that conversation you had with DJ Icy Ice pulled me in. I think it was something about Asians playing hip hop music.
Yeah.
So growing up, I went to all legend parties growing up.
I was a promoter.
Right?
Yeah.
So It was so much fun. So I think it was maybe going to the arena.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
But even before
Rewind.
that, Rewind,
Yep.
before that, I would know where to go to house parties. If the house parties had legend DJs,
Of
or
course.
that's where you want to go.
Right.
So, and it's through soul music, hip hop. That's where our generation wanted to go.
Let's take it back. Let's tell the story from where do you feel your creative journey started?
I think at home with my parents.
Okay.
You know, because my mom, she's a pharmacist in the Philippines, but she also did so many creative things at home. Like she would taught me how to crochet using my hands to create something. My dad is a mechanic. He did a lot of, he worked on cars mostly, but then he worked for Amtrak. So he also took care of fixing things inside those cars. So really my journey of creativity really did start at home with my parents. But they also had their own businesses too.
Where in the Philippines your parents come from?
See, they met here in historic Filipino town.
My parents too. Okay.
Really? That's awesome.
But my grandma's a pharmacist too.
Oh, really? Yeah. So she came to America in hopes to have her own business also, but it was just so hard reading.
Did you go to school out there?
She did.
The pharmacy school?
She did. Yeah, she did. She opened up her own pharmacy in the Philippines. So they were in Luzon, Manila. But then my grandfather fought in the war at the Battle of Bataan.
Okay.
He was a sergeant. So they gave a lot of soldiers land if you were on a higher rank. So he was awarded land, and then he had to relocate his whole family to Ilocos. So my mom had to just kind of move around back there. And that's kind of like, she grew up on a farmland. So she was like, oh, I can go into pharmacy, because it was like, hey, this is a study of like herbal plants. My grandfather knew a lot about like herbalism and just a study of healing too.
Okay.
That was his thing.
So, and then she was a pharmacist out here.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was a pharmacist technician. It was so hard for her to get her license out here. She's helping raise 3 kids. She's working during the day. My dad's working at night at Amtrak. So it's not easy.
Right. How does that bring you to your creativity and what you wanted to do or what you discovered first?
Well, I wanted to go into pharmacy like my mom.
Okay.
But I thought, oh, damn, chemistry is like so tough right now. It could have been my professor too. I was like, oh man, this is kind of tough day by day. But she was like, it looks like you like to do hair. Like it makes you happy. You're very creative. If you want to go into hair school, I will help you set up like your school, going into school, and help you open up your own business.
But how old are you at this point?
Must have been 20, in my early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, early 20s. But when I was starting to do hair and have fun with it, I just started going to school at PCC.
Okay.
And I was like, man, I don't want to write this paper. I think I want to go into cosmetology school. So my sister, my younger sister, and my mom I mean, we were breaking piggy banks just to get me into like school. So we're like, all right, let's try it. And I just loved it ever since. So now I'm 25 years into it.
Wow.
On like Art Form Studio is now going to be 18 years in business. And I still love what I do.
This is one of the cool things that kind of just came to mind as I was thinking about it, is that most of the guests so far on the show have been DJs, because essentially I'm a DJ and those are my friends and that's who I call first. You so happen to also be DJing. But I find the parallel in the fact that, like, doing hair, you're kind of working for a client. You kind of have to, typically, they tell you what they want. So you kind of have to express yourself through what they want. And kind of like if you're DJing, like certain events where you're kind of playing music for people, but you kind of insert yourself into that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I just kind of found that kind of cool, which almost made this place make a little more sense. I was like, I could see that now.
Yeah, it's been a journey, right? So at first we were a hair salon, and then having musical influences, like my husband being a DJ, I was like, hey, you know what? Let's bring your records to the shop and have like a listening station. So we always had the decks at the shop.
Let's hold that. Let's take it back to a little bit. Like you started at PCC first is when you decided. Okay.
I went to PCC.
And then when did you actually get into like, what was the school what do you call the school for hair?
Is it at PCC too?
There's hair.
Yeah. So they had a cosmetology school at Pasadena City College. So I went there first.
So hair falls under cosmetology.
Yes, because the state licensing requires you to get licensed for hair, nails, and massage. Well, about like facial, like being like an esthetician too. Mm-hmm. So you do a lot of hair and makeup, but with a cosmetology license, you could do basically a lot more.
And you got your license at PCC?
I did. I passed the state board exam, and then I still wanted to go into school. So my mom was saying, like, if you want to own your own business and I can help you through it, you have to go to business school.
Oh, okay.
That was like, you can't do this without going to business school. I said, all right.
It's kind of smart in the sense that, people in something like hair would be like, okay, well, I got my license, now what?
Yeah. But she was like, no, you'll know more, you'll gain more, go to college, maintain that like determination and follow through with education. Because she's like, you know what? Education is something no one else can take away from you.
Right.
That the knowledge that you have to own your own business, own your own craft, just keep learning constantly is something that she instilled in me.
So you get your license. What do you do from there? Are you you went to school.
Mm-hmm.
Are you trying to get jobs now in hair?
I did go to Beverly Hills and tried to interview with other like celebrity hair salons, but I was like, let me go through different routes. I went to Carlton Hair International at the Beverly Center, and I got hired as an assistant and just running through, helping everybody, learning everybody else's techniques. Then about a year or so, I could take my own clients. But if you're going to different parts of Beverly Hills, you either just do haircuts or you just become a colorist. For me, I just wanted to do everything. And I learned a lot from everyone I worked with. So it was really fun.
So when you started off doing hair, let's kind of break this down a little bit, because I kind of I've heard a little bit of it, but let's say and I don't know if this is the case for every salon. Mm-hmm. Do the hairstylists that work there, they have to rent spaces from you? Or is that only certain shops?
Only certain shops.
Okay.
Like different states allow commission or rent. Here in California, you can do both.
Okay.
So I first started doing commission for people that worked with me. And then once they were comfortable enough to rent a station, and they have their own clientele just coming in to see them instead.
So what did you do first?
I did commission first and then slowly did rent. And then just to maintain the business, we need another group of individuals that want to start building their business.
So just to clarify, so if you're working commission means you kind of work at the salon, mm-hmm. and the salon pays you for each thing that
Yeah,
you do?
per commission, like depending on who they're working with, what they're doing here, or haircuts or hair color. We provide a certain amount of, tools, equipment, and then also training too.
Okay.
Like when I'm training the next generation of new hairstylists, it's like, okay, well, this is what we can provide. What can we work together to do to just keep growing?
If you rent a station, essentially you're just your benefit is you're in a building and you kind of bring your own clients and you just pay monthly, and then whatever you make is what you make.
Yeah, basically. It helps me out on like paperwork too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have both.
I have both. Yeah.
Okay.
I have like 2 people on commission, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us that are on just sharing, rental space.
Cool. So essentially there's them renting a spot helps pay for the whole, a little bit.
Not the whole thing, but
No.
It helps just build the community. I mean, I should make some changes, but yes, it does help essentially.
So how many jobs would you say that you worked on your own before you decided, okay, it's time for me to open my space?
Okay, so I was working at Carlton Hair International at the Beverly Center for almost 5 years. Then about 2-3 years, I went on my own to rent my own station in West Hollywood. But I just kind of noticed like, oh, I'm bringing my clientele farther from wherever they lived, and it wasn't really where they were coming from. So I thought, okay, well, I need to find a place where it's closer to home, closer to like my demographic of clientele. So my husband at that time, he was like, let's find a place for you. And we found this old Chinese movie theater in the outskirts of Chinatown. And that's where we first started our business. The art form studio started in Chinatown.
And when it first opened, how big was that? How big was that space?
It was like almost 900 square feet. It was pretty small.
Okay. So about half of this?
This space is about like almost 1,600 square feet. So yeah, almost about half. Which it wasn't the right location for us.
Okay.
It was a beautiful space, but the location, no one was really walking by,
Right. Which I guess kind of brings me to my next question. Where does your clientele come from?
It's mostly now here, Pasadena.
Well, how do you gather your clients? Is it word of mouth, referral?
It's both. And then it's families. I've been doing this for over 25 years now. So it's like, oh, I'll still do my friends' hair and then their family's hair and then their kids. And, it's the community, that understands. And then also I've been doing more curly hair.
Okay.
Ever since I had my kids are half Black and Filipino. So I learned more and more about different curl patterns, and I wanted to learn more and more. I went to school in Pasadena, so most of the women I went to school with were mostly Black women. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you know what, we're going to teach you. You want to learn? I'm like, yeah, I want to learn everything. It's like if you're a seamstress and you have different textures of patterns and fabric, and it's like, see that as like fabric, and then working with people that want to learn more about their own hair and how to take care of it was definitely something I really wanted to do. So now my clientele is coming from the west side of town, which I first started in the west side.
It's funny, yeah.
So now it's like I'm bringing that clientele kind of like over here because there's not many women or men that do a lot of naturally curly hair, but it's more now than before.
Right. Do you have any clients that you've had like since day one?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. At Carlton Hair International, when I was working there, I have friends that I met that was working at Rampage when Rampage was a thing for women back in, I think it was late 90s, early 2000s. I still have this one client that still sees me. She doesn't live that far from here, probably closer to like USC. But like because she's still from LA and she still lives out here, she still sees me, and she's brought a lot of clientele to see me. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
That's like 2 decades. Yeah, she still comes in.
If I still had hair,
yeah.
I'd probably still go to the same person. I don't know.
You don't know. It depends. It's like a growing relationship you have with someone.
Okay, so you opened the studio in Chinatown. let's break that down. Let's break down some of the economics of opening a business, opening a studio. Like, what is that process? And
Oh man, it was day in, day out. Right before I opened up, I think we got married and we're like, okay, we want to open up our own business. I was going into the urban planning board in LA, trying to like get all my permits, trying to get, you know, everything to open up shop. And it took me every day for a whole month to open up shop in Chinatown. It was tough, you know. I did get a lot of help from people there. I had my daughter on had like a little like carry-on backpack.
the carrier, the baby carrier.
Baby carrier. I was like in and out there trying to like get all my permits. And so it was good. It's just like I have this determination. Like if I say I'm going to do it and I'm really passionate about it, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Even if I know I'm going to fall or make mistakes. Those are things that I have to learn from.
So in a nutshell, what are some of these things? Because this is kind of what some of the stuff I like to cover in the podcast is the not so glamorous part of the story. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh, these celebrities come in and get their hair done. No, I kind of want to know, like, what are these permits even for?
Oh, man, it's for, okay, so, like, sometimes there are liquor stores that cannot open next to each other. So I had to have, like, maybe a 3-block radius of, like, maybe a hair salon here or a hair salon there. But it's not as strict as other businesses. So, I mean, I have a hair salon that's right across the street from us or the same block. Back then, I remember it was permits for, like, chemicals that you use. Like you have to pay a certain amount to like, because you dump chemicals, there's another part of like that issue that, you know, we try to be as less toxic as possible over time. And so you have to get permits to, taxes, you know, business taxes, right. Permits for sales taxes too. If you're selling anything, you want to be able to understand like how much taxes are going to be played into at the end of each quarter. When do you pay your taxes for sales? Mm-hmm. So that too is another. And then getting, I wanted to open up shop as soon as possible. So I went to Sacramento to get my permit to open up my hair salon, because you have to have a salon permit to open up and you have to have your own license as a cosmetologist. Make sure that's ready to go. And everyone that works with you also has to have all their license like up to date. So it's a lot of things to think about when you're owning your own hair salon. It's easier now when you have these hair studios that have like basically small spaces just for an individual hairstylist or 2 people to share a space. So there's like, you know, they're like little, I'd say like little office spaces for hair salons for this one particular like hair studio. So, I mean, eventually that might happen, that I would want to invest in something like that to really give a hairstylist more opportunity to have just their own space, the way they want to set it up the way they want to do it.
So it's similar we were talking about earlier where you rent a space, but it's almost closed off into like
your own little space.
Like little cubicles. And
exactly.
It's like your one room salon type of deal.
Yeah. That's essentially what everyone's doing right now. I just feel like here it's a community space. People want to work with other people around them, but there's also people that just don't, you know?
Right. And also I feel even as a customer and you come in, it just feels a little more traditional in that sense. You know, you're sitting and there's someone next to you also.
Yeah.
And then you strike conversations with everybody.
It is more for like a extroverted type of individual, maybe. Like some of the introverts that I work with, they're like, going to work on a Sunday or Monday when nobody really is around, because that's a typical hairstylist day off is like Sunday, Mondays are off. But yeah, it's really nice to like just work with a whole group of people. And that's, I feel like how my business has evolved, because I just love being around people.
So you open your salon, you get through all the permits, struggle, but you made it happen. You opened the first space. Do you have employees right away? Do you have other stylists working with you right away?
I did have a friend I was working with at Carlton Hair International, and she was just ready. She just had her kid. And I think being a mom, having your own space in your own time, you have more control. Our kids grew up in our salon. You know, we had clientele that understood that we're moms too, or like some of them were single moms and had to bring their kids in. And I'm like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just do it all together and raise our children while we work.
Yeah. Set up a little play area for them.
Yeah, man. I've had like playpens in here. I had a lactation station in the back where I just had my second kid. I mean, we always brought our babies to work.
Right. And then as a business owner, how long did it take before that first business was actually even making you money?
Oh man, I don't think anything makes me money these days. But it's a profitable amount.
Or not even profitable, let's say a livable.
It took time because after 4 years, we had to move. Mm-hmm. You know, that was during the recession. Mm-hmm. And knowing that we didn't have like a lot of people coming in because it wasn't like a walkable area. I mean, we were right next to the 110 freeway. So everybody was leaving, not really staying in the area. Mm-hmm. Maybe a couple people that were driving away from the Dodger Stadium would just sit there stuck in traffic and be like, oh, wait, what is that? And we had a sign in the front that said hair, makeup, music, fashion. And we sold like clothes at that time. We had the turntables nearby, near a window. And then I think with this one time, this guy came in. He's like, oh, wow, this place, I thought it was an art studio. You guys should do art shows here. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So we started doing art shows once a month. I mean, we had the decks there already, so my husband would DJ, his friends would DJ, and that was, like, really nice because they would, you know, at that time, they would record their vinyl sets and just, like, you know, have, like, their mixtapes on line, maybe kind of, like, starting that off. And then there was a time where it was just hard to earn a profit. And with the recession, we were like, okay, we need to find another space. And so that's where I found the Arts District. It's like, it'd be cool, the art form studio in the Arts District. Yeah. So that's where we were for, I'd say 6 years. And then we had to move because the owner of the building with eminent domain states that you can basically kick everyone out of your own building. And you got to just go and find your own space. So I think I had 6 months to find a new space.
Wow. They shut down their building, and how many businesses were in there besides you?
There was offices upstairs. There was this one, Rafu Shimpu is a Japanese newspaper. It's been there for years, so they didn't have to move. I mean, they had a good space. I think they're still there. I don't know how many years now, but I think it was just them. It is still a hair salon in the space we were in, but it was the Los Angeles Police Department and Fire Department pension fund that bought the building. So it was a city building that bought it. So for us being like who we are, I don't think it was a good look to like really stay anyway. Yeah. But I found this space here in Highland Park, and I always told people, like, hey, Highland Park is going to be the next best thing. If anyone wants to open up a business, you should go there. I didn't know I was going to be here when I said that. So internally, probably did put it into perspective that, oh, shit, I just said that I would recommend people going there.
You put it into the world.
I did. I said it, and I was like, now this is the best space for us because there's so many people walking in this neighborhood. I mean, even back then, when I walked through the streets before I opened up, I was just taking a look and see like who is walking these streets. And some of them I just knew. I was like, hey, that's my client. Like, she's from this neighborhood. I would be here too and open up. So it was nice to know. I only live 5 minutes away from here. Okay. So I knew it was like, oh man, that would be really ideal if we got this space. And fortunately, one of the property managers was one of our clients. And so it just kind of happened organically that he was like, oh, it would be good for you guys to be here. We just want people who are independent business owners to want to come in here. And it was the best thing for us because our kids went to school in the neighborhood. It was easier for me to be mom and run a business.
Yeah. So what I find fascinating about the neighborhood nowadays is the fact that a lot of the businesses here are still like small business, independent businesses, but the type of people is a very,
It's different.
there's a lot of yoga mats. I saw like 2 when I was circling for parking,
Yes.
maybe 3.
There's a kinship yoga space across the street, which I love going to. I have a friend that actually grew up in Eagle Rock, and she teaches there. Stella, she's amazing. If anybody ever comes around this neighborhood, you got to take a class with Stella. She's just like a lifesaver, and she was a social worker at first, and then she's like, you know what, I need to do this. So it's different. It's different, and I think everybody's evolving too. You know, the east side of LA is definitely changing. I mean, we have not just independent, businesses here, but there are more kind of corporate businesses in the neighborhood, which isn't so bad, but at the same time, it helps me with our business.
Right.
So, I mean, everything's always going to change, and how do we adapt to it?
Yeah. Yeah. But for the most part, like the neighborhood is still very like, it feels local still.
Hopefully it still gives that vibe, right? Like business owners like me, like not a lot of people know where I'm from, or I'm super low key. Sometimes I don't really sometimes I'm not on the forefront of my business. I'm behind the chair, behind the turntables. I'm not really coming into, I'm not really coming in or out of my way to like say, hey, you know what, I'm here. But when people do come in and they see, haircuts and records, like, what is this place? It kind of evolved into something I really wanted to do more of during the pandemic when I started DJing.
So the past 2 locations you had, was it similar to this where you had like a record wall and all that stuff?
In Chinatown, it was when my husband stopped playing records, or at least like when Serato was starting to come in. He started to pack up all his like records and boxes at home. I was like, man, it's kind of depressing. Like, we need to still share this, And I was like, what if I went into Amoeba one time and I saw this wall of records on the wall, and I told my husband, like, hey, there's this wall of records at Amoeba. You want to take a look at it? He's like, let's go right now. I want to see how they did it. So as soon as he saw that, he's like, okay, cool. Like, we can do that at the shop. And just like, it was the first time we had a wall of records at our small business. And so that we were there for 4 years. It wasn't the intention to have a record store yet, but we had it at the shop. Listening to vinyl every day was just like so much more warm. It's just more inviting. It's different. And then when Serato came about, we moved to the Arts District. And at the Arts District, I said, you know what? I think we should start having a record store too. Because it had like a little separation. It wasn't as like open as this studio is right now. There was like the front area, the waiting area was like our record store. Still is here, but there was like walls that separated us. Okay. So he had the intention of like, okay, yeah, maybe it is a good idea to have a hair salon and a record store.
Do people actually, are people coming here digging?
Yeah. I think more so than before. I think records is definitely making a comeback. It has been the past like a year or two. Maybe during the pandemic, people were buying records. But even before that, I feel like my husband did say, like, it's not just men buying records, it's more women buying records. Me being in the record store a little bit more, I've noticed there are more women buying records too now. It's been really nice to see like the evolution of who's coming in.
So I'm assuming the main focus of the business is the hair part, right? Yes. But is there you or your husband, or is there somebody like kind of curating the records that are being sold?
Or is it just kind of all him? This is all his curation. And so it is like a flagship store too for Jazz is Dead and Linear Labs records, where he definitely has a lot of production work into Jazz is Dead and Linear Labs. So it's been nice to see, like, because we have a lot of Jazz is Dead shows just right across the street from here.
Right. I saw Diggable Planets there. That was a couple years back.
Yeah, it was like right before the pandemic.
That may have been the first time I heard about Jazz is Dead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of, because Jazz is Dead had mostly we didn't have a lot of hip hop artists come up around, but because of the jazz influence in their music, it made sense to have them.
Right. So your husband does shows down the street. Is he still like buying and selling records? Like,
yeah. That's why we actually, when we go to like flea markets, we go to flea markets every Sunday morning. It's been a thing that we've done for years. So, I mean, he's been doing it all the time. But then when we got together, we're like, okay, like this is the Sunday walks, you know, and a lot of our furniture comes from the flea markets. It's like we repurposed a lot of the stuff has been repurposed into something that we use as like our hair stations. So it's kind of like and like records too. It's like vintage items. This was built from a whole bunch of vintage items
So so the inventory is past his own collection. It's like other stuff I'm selling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's like sometimes I'll see records that are sold. I'm like, oh, we got to get this record back in here. Or this is a popular record. Or for him, it's more like this is a rare record. Most of the records here are more like first presses.
Who's going through pricings and like...
He does.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go through it ourselves first and he'll look at it and like, okay, yeah, that's reasonable. Let's go through that first. And then a lot of it, I mean, we downsized a lot because he's so busy also. So then I was like, well, I can help out now. So I'm kind of stepping into the vinyl world more and more every year. And now I'm kind of seeing like, okay, what else can we keep in here? Who else is coming in that's looking for something specific? When I have time to be here in the front instead of behind the chair with my clients, and some of my clients too dig for records. So it's kind of like, hey, what are you into right now? What are you wanting to listen to? So it's kind of like someone walked in and said, hey, do you have any R&B records? I'm like, not much, you know, but mostly jazz, soul. And so I'll ask her like, well, what kind of music are you into right now? She's like 90s R&B. I'm like, okay, well, let me see what I have that this music was sampled to create this, you know, song. So that was kind of like giving her more information because she was digging through records and saw a record that we labeled that said A Tribe Called Quest. And she's like, well, A Tribe Called Quest isn't on this jazz record. We're like, but they sampled this song to create this song. And they're like, oh. So it's really educating, you know, the younger generation too that's coming in that wants to know why.
Music nerds.
They're really digging deep, you know.
That's dope. And those are younger people?
These are younger people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's really nice because then I have like my friend's kid who's, I'd say 18 now. And he was like, oh, I'm really into the Jazz is Dead collection, auntie. Like, I'm also into like some of this jazz music that I know was sampled to make this music. What is it that you have? I'm like, okay, look, we have like rare records here. He's still young. So like, this is like first issues. So it's like, you're not there yet to collect, rare records. But this is for Jazz is Dead. These are musicians that help create the jazz music of that past that hip-hop artists used in the 90s. So I said, if you listen to this artist, this sounds like what this sounds like in the 90s for a hip-hop, you know, group. And he's like, oh, that's cool. So we introduced him to like other artists like Gary Bartz, where Tribe had definitely sampled from his music. So he was like, oh, cool. So then he'll go on Spotify and do more research and be like, oh, I want to come in Artform and buy this record. So it's kind of nice to see like you build that relationship with your community. They want to learn more. So I feel like this is definitely a hub for like music history, art.
So not to go too in depth, because this is probably, again, would love to speak to your husband at some point too. So Jazz is Dead is probably more of a conversation for him. But in a nutshell, just because we've kind of talked about it a little bit, and I feel the records here have a lot to do with that, what exactly is Jazz is Dead for the people just watching?
I'd say like if you go onto their website, it's like a love letter to musicians of like paying homage to the musicians of the past that were at that time working on their music, kind of reviving their music again. of that sound because my husband just records on analog.
Mhm.
So a lot of this music is inspiration from what these artists used to create and creating that similar sound now.
So in theory, I know they put on shows, and is it like it's him and Ali Shaheed from Tribe?
Yes.
And is there anyone else?
Just the two of them
two of them.
produce and collaborate with the main artist. Like, right now, Azimuth, that's a Brazilian, artist of three or four guys historically.
So essentially, it's them doing production and working with classic or like sort of jazz artists.
Yes.
Making new music.
Yeah. Soul, jazz. There's just so much. And then they also work with new artists that remix a lot of their music too. And then there's instrumentals that the guys have done without any vocals. So it's just music they've been really passionate about creating. And then the Linear Lab side is just my husband's production. Mm. And those album covers, I helped out a lot to do hair, makeup, and be behind the camera to help support an album cover look. So it's been a lot of fun.
So, yeah. So, okay, so the studio now, again, you have the hair, you have the business. Do you have employees for the record side too?
No, it's just basically us. Yeah. I mean, I want to say on the weekends, there's a lot more diggers in the weekends, and we don't open. During the pandemic, we closed a little earlier now. We used to be open till 8 p.m. We're open daily, but after the pandemic, it was just slower, just in hair and in, the record store. So we decided to just be open until 6. That's not enough time for someone from the West Side to come out here to dig or anything, but it's been a nice atmosphere to have it as a part of our business.
So because of the records, I know, obviously you've always been into music. I mean, even before we talked, you were talking about you're into dance and everything too. Mm-hmm. What about the DJing side? So I know you said you started DJing not too long ago.
Not at all. And I did go to the Beat Junkies Institute of Sound for the intro part of it, which was so beneficial just to learn about the equipment I'm using, how I'm going to transition into another song, even learning the basic scratches, So, and these are when I first came into their space, my mouth just dropped. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, they have great space.
Yeah, great space. And it's the actual Beat Junkies that are teaching you. I thought they had assistants teaching you. Essentially, there are, a team of people helping out too. But I was like, wow.
Oh, that's this is Mr. Chuck.
Yeah, it is. That's my professor right there.
Chuck and I used to teach together.
So good. You guys are great teachers. So good. I mean, I love it.
Well, we were teaching. I was never Beat Junkies. I was teaching. We were teaching together at Scratch.
Nice. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it started. I mean, Scratch Academy was the first one I heard about.
Yeah. That's a whole other story in itself too.
Yeah. I mean, it's essential to all the other DJs that came from learning from other DJs, and that's how you learn, right? Just more and more. Sometimes I'll watch YouTube videos of my favorite DJs. I'm like, okay, how did they transition to that, to this? What song works with that?
So what was it that made you finally just say, okay, because your husband's been DJing.
Yeah.
And you've been married how long now?
This year, 18. So Art Form Studio is 18 years old this year, and we've been married almost 18 years too.
So 18 years, and how long was it before you finally said, okay, I want to try to DJ now? But
you know what? It was during the pandemic.
Okay.
During the pandemic, it was illegal for me to touch anybody else. So I was like, damn, what do I do? And so our business partner, Andrew Lojero of Art Don't Sleep, he manages a lot of the events here too when it comes to book signings. All the Jazz is Dead presentation is presented by Art Don't Sleep. So he was programming Art Form Radio at Art Form every Thursday. It was every single Thursday. He had DJ lineups. A lot of my favorite LA DJs would come in on Thursdays. And so it was a good vibe here. We had DJs the whole day. It started off with my husband in the morning and then would end off with other DJs. So that's when he hit me up. He's like, yo, you want to do this during the pandemic? I mean, you got time. Yeah. So I said, you know what? You're right. but I don't have any records. He's like, just use Artform records. So I just would dig through every record and just kind of came up with an idea.
So wait, this is your husband or your husband's partner? There was
my husband's partner, Andrew.
Okay, he brought it up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was like, hey, why don't you do this? And some of my colleagues too were like, well, the salon's not working or operable, so we would be in here recording our own DJ sets by ourselves because nobody could come in anymore.
Were you doing like the live streams and stuff too here?
I wanted to, but at that time I'm like, oh, how can I do? Well, before the pandemic hit, all those were live streams.
Okay.
On Worldwide FM. So that was live every Thursday. And then it would just go up on Mixcloud after that. But when the pandemic hit, we couldn't really be with each other. So we just pretty much sent our sets.
Right.
Oh, so yeah, during the pandemic is when I started doing my segment of the radio show on Artform Radio. I called it Art Forms of Yesterday. LP cover art of the past that I was inspired by playing certain tracks of the album. And then I would read liner notes from it. I would read and showcase, like maybe on my Instagram, what the album cover looked like. And just talk about like the actual physical record and what it visually shows, what the music could sound like. So like when I look at our wall of records, it's like an Instagram grid. Basically, it's like the before music videos were out, your album cover would have to make a statement for your music. So it was more like if I knew there was a lot of detail to the album cover, I was like, man, the music must have a lot of detail into it too.
Right. Before you went to Beat Junkies to take lessons, were you already kind of practicing? Were you already kind of learning?
A little bit. Like my husband would tell me like how to use like the mixer and transition from one song to another, but it was more in-depth when I went to school for it. Like, okay, speed it up, slow it down.
And the mechanics of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, on how to touch the record. And
where to hold it better.
Right.
So that was better for me to learn, which I was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And just like talking to all of them, they're like, yeah. I mean, even mathematics, like, hey, take the other foundation class. I'll make you a better DJ than your husband. I'm like, yeah, promise me that you will do that. I mean, you're learning from the best, DJs in LA. Like, they're my favorite DJs.
Yeah. To me, one of the cool things about going to a DJ school like the Beat Junkies, and Scratch used to have this before too. I didn't see it as much nowadays, but like when I first started there, I could definitely build a community and like that becomes, because, I started with a DJ crew, right? Mm-hmm. Like those are your people you start DJing with, you learn from each other.
Yeah.
You kind of go to gigs together, or with one person that's a gig, you go to their gig. Mm-hmm. So I would get that sense from Scratch years ago, and I see that with like the Beat Junkies now. Like a lot of the kids and even adults that come out of there, they end up being friends and they'll go to each other's gigs and stuff like that. So I mean, if anything, like aside from learning, like that's like a big plus is the community you build.
It is the strongest, I think, for us. I think it's music. Music binds everyone together.
Right.
Like when I did see that talk you had with Ice, I was like, yeah, you know what? Just growing up through like even just weddings, and if you're a wedding DJ, you can do that. Like Ice does everything.
Yeah.
He can do it all. I did one gig. It was like a corporate gig, and it was vinyl. This was just recent, like right before I took a Beat Junkies class, which I was like, God damn, maybe I shouldn't have taken this gig. But at the same time, I learned my lesson. Mm-hmm. It's like people are going to ask you for certain music, but some don't understand that you don't even have that when they're trying to make a request.
Yeah.
And so my colleague that I was spinning with, she's from New York, and she's like, dang, LA is a all request.
Oh, yeah.
Community here. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, New York is not like that. You respect the artist, and I get it. I was like, man, this is more tough than I thought. But I still wanted to do it. I still wanted to spin and create music that makes me happy, as well as like what I think other people could really enjoy.
Was that like one of your early gigs? Because before you took classes.
It was before I took classes. Yeah, that was an early gig. And then some of my clients own restaurants and bars, and they're like, hey, we have nights when we have vinyl nights. And I'm like, I'm down, but I don't have enough records yet.
Right.
I mean, I could take some of these here, but it's not mine, right?
Yeah.
Like, some of AJ's friends too would have their own spots. And I'm like, hey, why don't you come by? And then that's when I started buying more records for myself. I even dug through my mom's records, and she had,
I mean, that's how I started.
right? I mean, I grew up listening to all my mom's records anyway, and I was like, oh man, I know my mom has this, that. So I would go through her records, and I said, Mom, I'm gonna borrow your records. She's like, no, you can have it. I'm like, no, I'm gonna borrow it. I'll make this work. And so yeah, I call myself the dinner DJ.
Right.
From 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then go home, basically like just rest up before I have to take my kid to school the next day. So just going over that, building my collection. I will start my podcast again with like the album cover art. It's just, working on having a business, being a mom, also DJing from time to time. Like I DJ maybe 3 times a month now, trying to work on 4 times a month. So it's been nice. It actually helps me with my business too when people see me at different locations, and then they'll say like, oh, she does hair too? So it's like nice to converse with people that they see a woman spinning records. They're like, whoa, wait, hold on. You're still spinning records?
So the DJ side, would you say it's like becoming a second career, or is it still kind of just like a hobby that...
I think it's a second career. It's a part of my career.
Okay.
I have a space that I call the Art Form Studio, Haircuts and Records. It's like it evolved into something I do together.
Okay. So the way I see it then, it kind of always has been. Now just you've kind of taken the steps to do that part better.
Yeah, I think so. And it just evolves, right? I always tell my kids practice makes progress because I listen over my sets and I'm like, oh, I could have transitioned that sooner, or like I could talk about this a little bit more. So it's an evolution. I feel like there's this one episode I loved the most because it was like maybe my 5th episode that was so much better, that I transitioned better. I learned better from after taking, beat junkie classes. So, and just learning from other people, it's been really good.
Just to touch on a little more of the business side, right? Is it just you, or is it you and your husband are technically partners, or how's that work?
I'd say it's mostly me now, like the past year, I want to say, because he's been working on creating a lot of music, and that's just his main focus. Music, art, even making music videos that are like short story film, so that too is something that he's more focused on. Now I'm transitioning into creating this world together. So if you look at, I kind of transitioned some of the album covers up top, making it more, I'd say, salon centric as opposed to salon adjacent.
Right.
So it's more like having the visual connection to like the artwork of hair and how that is kind of relating to our business as well. So I think I've kind of transitioned that. Now in the front of our business, I have like one hair station and a listening station. So now, well, before it was just the turntables and the records. Now it's just like having my hair dryers inside here and having everyone kind of being in this part of like a community space to talk about music, talk about self-care. What else is it that they want to do to have like just a good, audible, high sensory space to enjoy music at. Yeah.
So since it's mostly you, I guess kind of what I want to touch on is like do you have like an LLC for the company, for the business? And then is that just you on there? Is that both of you, or does that even matter?
I don't know if it really matters anymore at this point, because it is mostly me running the business. And it is like when we opened up the record shop, it was like, okay, not to create profit, right?
Well, I guess the better way of asking the question is because you have your business type of you have your business here and your husband has his own business and other dealings. Is it all under one company, or do you have like separate companies for everything
Separate.
you do?
Has to be separate, because it's like you want to filter out what is hair and what is like the retail side of it. We got to pay taxes too on retail stuff. So I separate salon retail as opposed to like record store retail. Eventually what's going to happen is that he's going to like not be the curator of the records, and it may be mostly me at some point, because it's like our bandwidth is getting just, shorter.
And then I know we kind of touched on it earlier when we were talking. And then even as I was setting up equipment, you were doing payroll, right? Like,
yeah.
How, I know you mentioned you have a few employees that are...
Actually, they're not employees. They're contractors.
They're contractors, okay.
So it's like they work on a day rate. During the pandemic, it was hard to get a lot of assistance because I didn't have any employees. So I still maintain contractors to help manage the business. So it could be that they're coordinating appointments, but now you can just make an appointment online. Everything is evolving. Sometimes other business owners in the salon industry are like, do you have a salon coordinator in the front or do you not? Because now you do everything online. I mean, for me, it's essentially better to have someone here. She's running socials. She's behind the camera taking, photo shoots for us. She's learning more about the record store side of it too, and how if an album cover looks cool, like let's talk about the music too. What were samples from this particular album? And then she'll be behind the camera helping me create like stories to tell for my art form of radio, art forms of yesterday sessions. So it's one person is great, and then another person is, my other girl is to train them to be the next generation to keep this community flow.
So what I noticed here too is, I know again, we've been talking about the records and the hair, but I see like photo backdrops and stuff too. Are you using those do you run out space for that too? Or is it?
Yeah. I have, actually, my daughter is a photographer. So she's also doing a lot of modeling and acting. And so she's like, you know what, Mom? I think I could do that. Can I use your space to do this, and that, and be a photographer? And I have my studio setting. I'm like, yeah, you can totally use this space. We have to shoot our physical like work too. So if it's like hair color, haircut, hair care that we're using.
So you shoot it all nicely.
Yeah. We have better lighting. We have a plain backdrop. We can easily control what we want to present in our art.
So just multiple ways of earning something.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we have such a big space. Like, I use this space too for education courses too. When I teach about hair, I start here first, and I have album cover art that I bring up and be like, hey, this is the inspiration that we're going to talk about, how to cut this type of haircut. Then we move over to the hair salon side and be like, this is actually what we're going to work on a doll head or a model, and then take pictures of it later.
So you have a stream of income coming from the hair side, a stream of income coming through the records. In theory, also, if you wanted to use the photo space, you have that, and you're doing like educational lessons and things like that. Are people paying for lessons? Okay.
Yeah. So we're also doing, in the future, I call it Art Form Academy. Mm-hmm. So with Art Form Academy, I'm either teaching working professionals that are cosmetologists that want to learn more in depth. And we just had one in April, which was a really good one to train a new trainee and someone who's a barber that wants to learn more about longer hair, curly hair texture. So that was really good. And it was like someone who was an older, more seasoned artist, and then someone who was new. So learning from each other was really good to bring together. And then I have also clients who have kids that want to learn more about their curly hair texture. So that too is like, it's more supplemental, but at the same time, it's a part of the business.
Right.
Especially trying to pivot right now, right?
Yeah.
People are kind of basically not having jobs right now. What else can we do to supplement other earnings, to educate? And I was just talking to my team about this too. It's like on social media, you want to present how to enrich other people's lives, educate, and entertain. So it's like those 3 E's are really essential to kind of like give that back.
What I find, and this is just through just being on the internet and just scrolling and things like that, I'm finding that a way to make money is teaching other people how to make money.
And that's how success, you kind of maintain that success, right? I think we were talking about this earlier when we said like, well, how do you maintain success? That's probably the most challenging part. Owning a business, how do you maintain that success? It's really pivoting to like not just one certain thing that you do. You want to incorporate other things that make that thing you do really special. So it's not just hair. It's like the community. It's also music that I implement as a part of our business. It's the visuals that you actually see when you're taking a picture of the artwork that you're creating. It may not seem like art sometimes. Like, I think that's why we were shut down in the first place, is like, oh, this is like so vain, right? You got to get your hair done and look all pretty. But it's really not essentially that. It's really making yourself feel better. It's a release of energy that when we cut hair, you're releasing energy that is not wanted anymore. So like by making a profit, I guess in the beginning, it wasn't really to like control the profit. It's really, I loved what I do so much. I want to share it. I want to build a community to express that. And I think over time, I realized like, oh, that's why we're still successful. It's because we bring in that community that constantly comes in and builds those relationships. I think that's why we're still here.
So, all right, you kind of already just touched on it, but let me just ask it. And this is kind of ends up being the little cliche part, right? But if there's any words of advice to give people who are, let's say, starting their own business or kind of doing anything in a creative space and making a living off of it, what would you say?
Practice makes progress. Nothing's perfect. Every time you do something, it just gets better and better each time. And if you feel like, oh, shoot, that was an accident, I made a mistake, you're learning from these mistakes. Nothing really is an accident. It's meant to happen. So if you feel like it's still uplifting you personally, you can still continue that. But if it's not, if it's just weighing you down constantly, it's not something you should really pursue over and over again, if that is what's happening to basically your energy. So I think if it's still making you happy, it's still bringing you joy into not just yourself, but to others, that's more reason to kind of keep going on.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been informative. Good to and again, first time someone who I had not known before.
Yeah, it's so weird how we've never met before.
Yeah, I feel we should have known each other because we know a lot of the same people.
Yeah, and we're the same age too.
And the same...
Grow up in the same LA area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you meet people when you need to meet them, right?
Well, we met through a good connection and it's just like music.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, thank
you
for
let
that.
People know where to find you.
Here at the Art Form Studio in Highland Park, Los Angeles. We are the Art Form Studio hair salon and record store. You'll find us all over LA to just kind of like share music more locally in LA. So we're at Checker Hall, we're at Tabula Rasa Bar, we're at Nosa Caipirinha Bar in Hollywood. So we're kind of spreading ourselves through, and a lot of us are hairstylists and DJs. So a lot of
so it's more than just you.
It's not just me now. Like I have my friend Ruby, who's my hairstylist too, and she spins with a vinyl group at Verdugo Bar on Wednesday nights.
Oh, that used to be that was our residency for we had that since it opened.
Wow. Yeah.
Up until the pandemic.
Yeah. They're back down again. So it's nice to see that they're still doing vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just inspired a lot of our team here. I mean, they've all collected records longer than I have. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, hey, why don't you come and spin with me? Nice. And they're like, okay. So
all right.
It's been fun.
Building hairstylists and DJs.
Yeah. They're actually, during Record Store Day, I had 3 other two barbers that used to spin vinyl, and one still spins vinyl from LA, and then one was from Toronto, and then another woman that is a hairstylist that I saw spinning vinyl years ago. I'm like, hey, do you want to come and and spin on Record Store Day? She's like, yeah. So it was nice to know, like, there are hairstylists and barbers that DJ, you know, they've always been doing that before.
Yeah.
And I think it's very tactile too. Like, we work hands-on.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of like work that.
Right. Oh, it's dope. It's dope. It's nothing I ever even thought of before, but like, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I mean, you know, we're like myself, I DJ and we do photos and videos, and I have a few friends that do that also. So why not hair?
Yeah. You guys can, I'm sure you probably have like friends that do their own hair.
Probably.
Or even cut other people's hair. It's
I used to, yeah.
Right? You probably did that.
I've cut
too.
my own hair.
Yeah. My husband too. He was like in junior high. He was cutting his own hair. He still cuts his own hair now. And he used to cut everybody else's hair.
Yeah, people used to come over and
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's
Never
very
thought of it.
tactile. I think if you're a tactile person, you need to like really you're better hands on, and you get yourself into everything else that is pretty much hands on.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you again. Social
you.
medias, share that with everyone.
Social media, I am Sherry Young on IG, Young with an E at the end. And then the Art Form Studio is _artform_studio on IG also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Functional Conversation, Sherry Young.
Thank you.